I see it on there. All right. Good evening, everybody. Today is, I believe, the March 8th meeting of NUARI, Needham Unite Against Racism Working Group. We are convening this evening over Zoom, and this open meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, almost 1 year ago, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19. So we have been advised and directed to suspend public gatherings, but we still have the ability for all members of public bodies all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along in the deliberations of the meeting. This particular meeting will not feature public comment, and I do note for everyone that the meeting is being recorded. So good evening, everybody. It's good to see you again. We are planning tonight for an agenda that will cover both the town's recruiting and staffing DEI efforts, and also then we'll come back to working with Lisa again on our guiding principles and intentional practices. As always, I remain optimistic that we might finish them tonight. I'm hoping, praying, but we'll see. And then also looking forward to a preliminary discussion of some diversity on our boards and committees and just starting to talk about that. I note that I did not receive the additional information from the moderator today, so I had hoped we'd have that when we looked at it. I do note, here Lisa noted as we were joining that it's International Women's Day. It's also 56 years after Bloody Sunday. So I'm saying that I'm hopeful that we're all here to make some good trouble in Needham. And thank you for all of us working together on that. So with that, I'm thinking there's one other piece that I want to talk about. We do have approval of minutes. Let's do approval of minutes first. So the minutes of January 4th were circulated. I would look for a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
And I will just call everybody to do that. Matt?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Marcus?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Vivian?
Yes.
Natasha?
Yes.
Toyin?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So thank you for that. We're looking forward at our agenda, and one of the things that we had expected was that we would have the final Tidwell report on the police investigation, and we do not have that final report yet. So we had planned to meet on the 15th with the understanding that we would have that report in hand. What I would like to ask the group or suggest to the group is that we cancel the 15th, that we move the Tidwell report and our second session on law enforcement to March 22nd. So move it out by 1 week. And that we then add in a meeting on March 29th. So we basically push everything down, if you want to think about it that way. I think it's very important that we have the Tidwell report the next time we meet with the chief, rather than extending it to another third meeting. I'm trying to also get all the various topic areas that we were trying to get to before town meeting kind of under our belt, so we can have a discussion about the report to town meeting, in fact, from the various areas. Is that acceptable to people at this point?
Do we know what's holding up the report?
So we had hoped to have the report, I think, originally by the end of the year and then early in February. What I can say is that we are working with Ms. Tidwell on the report. We need the report to include a good set of recommendations for the town, and I think we are very close to being finalized, which is why I'm only suggesting pushing it out by 1 week. When we release the report, I'm also expecting that the town will be releasing the internal investigation document at the same time. So all of that will come and we'll have that information to review.
So Do we expect that to be released at least a week before the meeting date?
Kate, I think it should be almost exactly a week before.
That's the current plan, yeah.
All right, and the other expectation is that the select board, in fact, will be discussing it before it comes to Newari. So it will be out in public with a public discussion before it comes even here.
Thank you.
Hey, Marianne, it's Marcus. Just a quick question. Will we be able to have questions ready to submit to the chief that he can answer when we meet on the 22nd? Is that something that we would be able to do?
Certainly,
as-
questions in advance are always welcome, Marcus.
Okay.
Marion, if I could add, the chief already made a presentation, so this really was for follow-up. So we'll send a reminder out, but that questions would be really helpful for him.
Okay. All right. If we could, Sandy, if we could invite Rachel and Alex to please join us. Hello there.
Hi there.
Both
Hi,
of you.
Rachel. Hi, Alex.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all.
It's good to see
Good to
everyone.
see you. I'm trying to think, I hate going around on Zoom because everybody going around is different. But Rachel and Alex, if I could ask the two of you to introduce yourselves to everybody, I think that would be great. And your role within the town, if we could start there.
Alex, you want me to go first?
Yes, we'll go with that. You'll start, I'll follow. It's great.
Okay. All right. We'll do that. That'll be us tonight. So I'm Rachel Glosper. I'm the HR director for the town. I've been with Needham for, my gosh, my anniversary is coming up this month. It'll be 5 years. Yeah, thank you. It seems like just yesterday. And I'm really excited about spearheading the DEI work that the town is doing.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Alexandra Montes McNeil. I am the assistant superintendent for human resources with the schools. I have not reached my 3-year anniversary, but it has been a very busy 2.9 years with the district. Looking forward to the conversation tonight.
All right, good. Rachel, do you want to start with an overview talking about the work that you're doing within the town already? I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So we're doing a few things now, actually, that we're happy to report this evening out to the Newari members. First being our applicant tracking system. The town is purchasing an applicant tracking software called NeoGov, which will allow us to hide personally identifiable information, such as name and addresses. And by doing this, we can prevent unconscious bias from occurring in the early phases of the selection process when it comes to hiring. So it's interesting, most people don't think that they're being biased when they're reading applicants, but they're unaware of the unconscious bias that kind of influences how they rate candidates once they see information such as a name or an address. A perception can be formed as it relates to a candidate's gender, their ethnicity, or their socioeconomic status. So by hiding this information, it'll allow our hiring managers to solely focus on the candidate's qualifications. NeoGov will also allow us the opportunity to redact certain information from resumes and cover letters. So we're really excited to implement this feature on the town side. Another thing that we're working on, the Metco summer hiring collaboration is what I'm calling it. The Park and Rec department is gearing up to do their hiring for the pool and summer programs. And so we've partnered with the Metco program to provide opportunities for children who attend school here in Needham during the school year to have opportunities to also work in Needham during the summer. And along with that, we're providing information for students where to obtain their lifeguard training and swim instructor certifications, where they could do that locally here in town, but also providing locations where students can get the certifications that they need locally near their homes. So we're excited about that collaboration. This will be a first for us. Next, we're starting a very new series called Roundtable Discussion Series. We're really excited about this one. We have our first roundtable discussion scheduled for March 22nd. And the purpose of this series is to provide space for all town employees to gather and discuss DEI-related topics in small group settings. So we're really excited. We're going to listen to a pre-recorded presentation on the 22nd. And then as a result, we will break into these small groups and discuss. And so I'm excited about this first discussion, and we hope to have many more. Lastly, the town has a employee resource group. It's our first here in town on the town side, and it's our first collaboration with the schools. And our group is called Stronger Together. Some of you may have heard about it. Alex will get into greater detail with all the work that the schools has been doing before we joined forces. They were doing a lot of great work on the school side, and she'll get into that. But Stronger Together is just an employee resource group that's designated as a welcoming, safe space for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, all BIPOC employees to gather and talk about shared professional experiences. This employee resource group brings together a community of employees in the town of Needham who have a desire to connect and drive change in the area of racial equity. And the group promotes an inclusive environment where all employees are valued and empowered to succeed. So I was just reading our purpose statement for you all. We meet every third Thursday of the month via Zoom for now. And we, as a group, sponsor the Roundtable Discussion Series. And we hope to sponsor also other events that we will put on for the town, both for employees and the community. And also we hope to get involved in some volunteer work as an employee resource group. So that's some of the stuff we're doing on the town side, and we'll turn it over to Alex.
Thank you, Rachel. It's been a pleasure collaborating with Rachel on the work of Stronger Together. So to give a little background on that, when I joined the town a couple of years ago, it was clear that one of the major concerns or major points that folks wanted to work on was diversifying our staff. And I also believe strongly in the retention of our staff, specifically as part of a portrait of a Needham graduate. One of the strategic objectives is to implement recruitment, retention, and the development process for staff growth and diversity. And also as part of the tenets of the REAL Coalition, it states, all students, regardless of race, economic status, English language proficiency, will have equitable access to diverse, quality educators and school leaders. So given that that was premise under which I entered into the position, we started to work on developing a affinity group for our staff of color. And we started with the schools, and we had conversations about the needs and professional development opportunities. And we were trying to develop some social interactions as well. And we got a little start to that. We didn't quite get as far as we would like, given the times. Then Rachel and I began having conversations about bringing the group together and that we would be stronger together. So that is in part how Stronger Together came to be. And we're really looking forward to expanding opportunities, not only for our staff of color, but also for our community about learning about some of these very important issues around race, equity, and inclusion. In addition to that, the schools have done a good job of increasing the number of staff of color over the last couple of years. We've hired about 37 staff of color over the course of the 2 years. And we've done so by really focusing on some professional development with respect to hiring. last year, and again this year, I have done a presentation with Leslie Smart, who's the Associate Director of MECO. And we are training folks about bias and how bias enters the hiring process. We also talk a little bit about the history as to why there are some historical reasons why it's a challenge to find staff of color or folks of color going into education. And one of those that's really kind of interesting is the effect of desegregation. So when Brown versus the Board of Ed happened, there were over 84,000 staff of color. And as a result of deseg and the history that occurred after that, we lost about 38,000 staff of color, Black staff specifically, who were teachers and leaders, and they lost their jobs. And sometimes in these conversations about hiring for equity, we talk about how many folks entered into the education profession because their families were educators, they had exposures to educators, and all of these things. That is just one small piece of the challenges, but it's one that's often overlooked as to the impact that this had for thousands of Black staff in particular, Black teachers and educators in particular. So in addition to that, as you know, in the Real Coalition, we have taken the responsibility of a committee taking the ownership of looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the curriculum committee is putting forward information regarding know yourself, know your content, know your student, and know your practice. And they're developing very important questions and competencies, as well as key reflections about those competencies with respect to race, equity, and inclusion. And one of the things that we're going to be working on next as a community at the school side is looking at those competencies and thinking about the evaluation process and really focusing on developing our educators, just as we're thinking of portrait of a Needham graduate, what is the portrait of a Needham teacher? And thinking about that not only through what is happening in the classroom, but professional development and evaluation, so that those goals and action steps that teachers are required to develop align with the goals of the district regarding these topics. I think those are the major points that I wanted to bring forward.
Alex, let me turn to you first for a second. Of the 37 who we've hired, have we been able so far to retain all of those? So
not all of those. So, but our plus minus is definitely plus. We do have exit interviews. Some staff left. Those aren't necessarily staff that were hired, but we have had some staff members move to other districts for promotional reasons or personal reasons. So what is really important to me is that when folks leave Needham, that they leave because they're leaving feeling good about the district and moving into positions that are next steps for them or for their lives.
great, thank you. And Rachel, I also wanted to ask, are there any baselines just in terms of numbers of staff of color that you can talk about just for the town, just to kind of ground people in where we are? And I think Kate has had a longstanding practice, I think, of trying to ensure that for as many positions as possible, that we have a diverse pool just as part of our practice. Is that? So.
Marianne, actually, I don't have any baseline numbers as Alex has been able to provide. We need to do better, though. I can tell you that on the town side, we need to do better. And one of the areas that I'd like to kind of see us kind of stretch ourselves a bit, our largest pool of minority employees are in our building and custodial staff. And so we really need to increase our numbers throughout the organization and at higher level positions. That's where we need to see the diversity hiring happen. And it's interesting, you asked the question to Alex about retention, because that's such an important element that goes along with it. We can get people in the door, but can we keep them here? And that's so critical to the work that we're doing, creating space and an environment where people, all people feel valued and welcome and appreciated with the work that they're doing.
Thank you. Marcus?
Yeah, just a couple questions. Thank you both for sharing. I truly appreciate you both being here. With regards to the first question, you said I think Alex said there were 37 people that were hired over the past 2 years of people of color, and that's in comparison to how many total people hired for the positions.
Yeah, I don't have that number with me, but I'd be happy to share that. We've been looking at those numbers, so I think if you look at our DESI data, which is actually the data I use as the data of record, because sometimes we're hiring mid-year and things shift. Our overall DESI numbers are going up what appear to be incrementally. It's also very difficult with how many folks we hired this year. It'll be interesting to see when the dust settles, how many positions were temporary positions, how many were permanent positions. What I can say is that we are making what I would view as incremental growth. I would like to see it expand further. So I meet with the last year and this year with the hiring teams so that we can continue to have conversations. And I'm having individual conversations with leaders regarding what is your equity goal regarding hiring, so that we can continue to make progress in these areas. Some of the learnings that I have had over the last couple of years is there are folks that want to work in Needham, and these folks are right there when positions post. So one of the things that we have started to do is post positions longer and allow networks to, we're using a lot of LinkedIn, for example, to connect to other networks and allow the information to get out to other communities. And we're encouraging folks to help us with those networks so that we can find more diverse candidates in the pools.
All right, then I had a couple more follow-ups. So along with that, you said there's been exit interviews and things like that. And what you prefer and what you hope is that people are leaving, for personal reasons and, for promotions and things like that. So has that been the case with the exit interviews that you've come across, or that is what is that what the vision or what we would like it to be in the future? Or has that been the case, or has it been a little bit of everything? And
I would say for the most part, it's personal reasons, or on occasion there's someone who leaves because it didn't work out in the way that they would have wished. There's a couple of ways that folks could exit, either self-choice, or there is also the developmental process of being part of the district. So I think we've had more success at having folks exit for their own reasons rather than because it's not a successful experience here in Needham.
And,
right. And my question for Rachel was,
Yep.
As far as I know, you said that we need to do better, we have to do better. And in what ways are we measuring our success? And what you said that, we have a decent ways to go as far as what we have for people of color in leadership and other positions other than really the custodial and building, maintenance and things like that. So what are we trying to do about that? And I know you want to do better. I just want to know what you're thinking on that.
sure. If I may, I'm just gonna just go back and answer for exit interviewing on our side of the house. So staff of color that we've had that have moved on from Needham has been for promotional opportunities, and they've gone to other communities for different promotional opportunities, which is great. So I just want to add that. But Marcus, what we're hoping to do with this applicant tracking software, so the hard numbers and the data we're going to be able to have now. And we're going to be able to use that data from this applicant tracking software to tell us, give us our hard numbers and give us a snapshot of where we need to be. And with these other programs that we discussed this evening with you all, we're hoping to just build a brand for ourselves and get Needham out there as the employer of choice. We want you to consider Needham and our vacancies when staff of color are looking for work. And so Alex and I will continue to collaborate on ways that we can continue to get ourselves out there as COVID restrictions lessen and we can get back to hiring fairs and things that we used to know and do. We hope to be involved in more activity like that. Certainly if we can, as a group, Stronger Together, representing the town of Needham, be involved in community activities, that's a great way to showcase Needham as the place to work. And also by providing an opportunity like Stronger Together for new employees so that they know when they are on board. We want to put that in our onboarding packet as information for folks of color to know when you join Needham, this is a resource for you. So those are some of the ways.
Oh, I just want to piggyback on that. I'm also part of an organization called MPDE, Massachusetts Partnership for Diversity in Education. And it's a collaborative group of over 30 districts who are in particular focusing on diversifying their workforce, specifically their teaching force. And we are doing work also with the state regarding pipeline and getting more folks interested in the teaching profession. There's a couple of state organizations that are looking at diversifying the workforce across the state. And I do have a seat at some of those conversations to be part of those processes and thinking about the impact of certification and some of the challenges around that for our staff of color and also just generally recruitment.
Thank you both so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Natasha? While Natasha's unmuting, I was just going to say, anybody who didn't pick up DESE, if that's not an acronym you're familiar with, it's Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So
Thank you. You can call me on all my acronyms.
sorry, Natasha?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think this is really helpful and I'm really excited about all the programs that are coming up or that are getting started. So I just have a couple of questions. For the roundtable discussion, how are people attending? Is it just the people of color attending, or I mean, is it just voluntary, or is it mandatory, or just trying to figure out how that group comes together?
Sure. So roundtable discussion is an all play. So that's for all town employees and school. So we're opening it up for both. It is voluntary, so it's not a mandatory requirement that you attend, but we're hopeful to get high attendance. And if you don't attend for this one, it's going to be so fantastic that word of mouth is going to go around and people are they can't wait till the next one. That's the plan. So that's what we're hoping for this month.
All right. So you haven't had any yet. You're starting it.
Yeah, this is brand new for us. Okay. Yeah, brand new.
And then for the Medco students, just a thought is that, thinking about support for them. So if they have questions or things come up, because it's a new program also, that if anyone discriminates against them or something, that they have support and know who to go to, that I think that would be helpful. But I think that's a really great way of the whole Medco student program for the summer is great. I guess the other question that I have is, in general, have you had minorities apply for jobs that are more leadership jobs? And if so, if they didn't work out, did they tell you why they chose not to take the job?
I'm trying to think of what position in a leadership role that we've had recently where we had some candidates of color.
So I'm presuming everybody knows that Katie's
I think that may have
predecessor
been, that may have
it
been.
was Christopher Coleman,
Yeah.
our assistant town manager, and he actually left Needham to go be the town manager in Westwood. So we lost Christopher after how many years? He'd been with us, Kate,
12
since
or so.
14.
Oh,
14 years. So part of the leadership of the town for a long time, but
No, I'm asking for, like, when you're interviewing and people
Yeah.
decide not to take the job, is there a reason that they give why they're not taking the jobs? Or just, you know, I'm aware of one position where the person was asked, do you think you'll feel comfortable in town? And they're like, well, maybe I won't. And they redacted their information. This was a while ago, but I'm just asking, you know, if we've had opportunities and they've decided not to do it, and if they've given any reason for it.
I have not had that experience, Natasha. I certainly hope that the example that you provided was well before I arrived. But so we haven't had any candidates that decided, candidates of color specifically, that decided not to take a position where they provided a specific reason as to why they did not.
Yeah.
So that I don't have an example that I could provide. Alex, I don't know if you have any.
Well, I can say right now, we are looking for several leadership positions in the schools right now. We have a couple of retirements, 3 actually retirements. We have a principal who's retiring. We have the director of health services who's retiring. We also have the director of nutrition services who's retiring. I feel like I'm missing one. It's a lot. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we're going to have some strong candidates come forward, and hopefully candidates of color who will be interested in working with us. I know that we are posting those positions. If folks are out there and can circulate them, it would be greatly. Oh, and director of wellness and physical education, K-12. So yes, we have several positions out there that we're hoping to really find some strong candidates for, and we will see how that goes. This has been the first real group of positions that have opened up in the district, quantity-wise and at this level. So I hope that we will have some strong candidates.
Thank you.
Vivian?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Rachel and
Hi,
Alexandra.
Vivian.
I think that all of you know that I have served on the personnel board for the town of Needham for more than 20 years. I can't believe I'm saying that. And that I currently serve as chair. I just wanted to make a couple of observations because I think they relate to some of the questions that have been asked. During my tenure, which frankly began when Kate was still the personnel director for the town, and then we worked with Chris Coleman very closely and others in leadership. One of the things that we've always focused on with the personnel board is to be sure that there is equity and parity with respect to those represented and non-represented staff in town. I'm very happy that there is more synergy now between the town of Needham's personnel director and Rachel and the school programs, because I think that that's very important to have something such as your Together program. Why does the phone always ring when I'm speaking? One of the things that we've also done over the years is review policies and procedures for the community as they are implemented and approved, not only by us, but then also by Kate for adoption. We have also, I think, held feet to the fire when it comes to recruitment. And I just want to make an observation that in my experience, one of the challenges in recruitment for a town like Needham is that we compete with the private sector, particularly for senior level positions, more senior level positions. We also compete with the Commonwealth, and we compete with other towns. So we are constantly going through a process where we are assessing not only how we classify positions, but how we formulate job descriptions, and also how we classify them for the purposes of compensation to be sure that the town remains competitive in the marketplace. And I want to say that I think all of those recruitment tools have gone a long way to yielding a better candidate pool, a more diverse candidate pool over the years. Of course, it's going to vary from position to position. And promotions are also something that we do take a look at. So just a couple of observations from that perch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Sue.
Rachel and Alex, thank you so much for being here this evening and sharing this great information about what you're working on. I just have a couple of quick questions. One is, I love the idea of the town partnering with Metco to create opportunities or enable our Metco students to have the ability to work in Needham in the summer, because we certainly want our Metco students to feel like they are part of our community. I just wonder if there are barriers that need to be addressed. Like I think about transportation. So how do we deal with that for those students?
Okay. Hi, Sue. Thank you. Good question. When we had our kickoff meeting to get this program started, transportation was on the top of our list as a potential obstacle. But we were able to just blast right through that, fortunately, coming up with alternatives to start times, dependent upon when trains arrive and departure times when they depart, and offering T-passes for the students, allowing them to get on the train and get in and out of Needham. So that's some of the things. So now that transportation, which was on the top of our list, is now at the bottom of our list because we feel like we've conquered that one. And we're just really excited to move it forward and see where we can take it.
I think that's great. I wonder also if there are, granted, a number of our Metco students wouldn't necessarily need help in paying for like lifeguarding classes or something like that. But if students do need that help, is there an avenue for that?
The lifeguard training and the swim instructor certifications are reimbursable. So they would be reimbursed for those certifications.
Great. I think that's terrific. I hope it works out. I'll be anxious to hear about it.
Great.
And then I'm also wondering, Rachel, I come from the school committee, so I know more about what's happening in the schools and what Alex is doing than the town. So one thing that I was also wondering about is how is diversity or DEI a part of the professional development process for employees of the town?
Mm-hmm. Right. That's an area, Sue, that we are going to continue to beef up. We had some diversity training, it was probably a couple of years ago now. So it's definitely time to have some more training offerings for our staff. So that's something that we will add to the list of programs that we're working on.
I mean, also clearly the roundtable is an opportunity for that as well, but I just was curious what else was happening.
Right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Sue.
Great. Thank you. Jen?
Thank you, everybody. I'm wondering, in respecting the confidentiality that might be involved with your Stronger Together network, can you share with us even some kind of general themes of what concerns people are bringing to the group that they want to see get tackled in town?
I'll start, Alex. Just generally, Jen, the group has just been there to support one another. This has been a really, really tough year. And really Stronger Together was pulled together from a very broken place, just hurt and feeling alone and like you're on an island. And so it was just, that's how it was born. And so we're really pulling together just to check in with one another and have free, safe space to learn how to navigate in predominantly white spaces that we find ourselves in at work. And so it's just that support for one another. We have talked about things that, you know, as a town, we'd like to see get better, largely around recruitment. And Alex, please, you know, correct me if you feel it's a different way, but largely around recruitment efforts and retention. Because like we mentioned, recruiting is only good as long as you can keep people here. So that's some of what we're hearing from the group.
No, I piggyback on that. That's correct.
Are there ways that you could imagine the broader town community could support the work that you're doing there? I'm thinking about, you know, what you say about trying to navigate majority white spaces, and there's a good amount of education of the white people in those spaces that are required for that to get better. Is there a way that the community can support what you're doing?
Well, I think the roundtable discussions will help because it's an all play for town employees. And so they'll have an opportunity to dive into some of these topics, and then they can support Stronger Together as a whole. But as far as the community and how the community can support us, you know, Kate's been great just about making sure that, you know, everyone knows that this is a priority and that, you know, Stronger Together is supported. It's a, you know, the town supports this group and wants as many people to participate who can to participate. And I just think as long as we keep getting, you know, kind of that outside support and encouragement, that if, you know, if we need some help in like bolstering attendance or things like that, or if we want to get involved in community activities, to know that the community supports us as a group to get out there and get more involved. I think that would help.
I just want to, since it originated with the work that we started at the schools, the schools have been, there's been zero complaint around trying to get our staff of color together. It's been very, very supported by the district administration, by Dan, and by the rest of the team and the communities. So we feel very supported there. I would say that one of the things that I could really use the help, and I'm sure Rachel can too, is that when we have positions, if the town can help us communicate those positions out to various organizations so that we can get those high caliber candidates of color and interested in coming and joining. I mean, I think Rachel and I both can do a really good job of selling our positions and why it's such a great town to work in and all the benefits that come with working in Needham, and they're quite a few. But we do rely on communication. Nowadays, the best way to network for positions is through networks. So as I mentioned before, we have a LinkedIn for the schools and we have positions posted, and where we can pick those up and tag them and move them forward. We really could have used the help with that, just so that we're getting everything out there. We aren't doing in-face career fairs, and we are doing online career fairs. The organization I mentioned before, Massachusetts Diversity for Partnership for Diversity in Education, MPDE, will be having a diversity fair specifically for staff of color, which I've participated in since I've come to the district. But networking is the way it's happening these days. So anything that we can do to pick up and network for these positions would be greatly appreciated.
Matt?
Thank you. And Rachel and Alex, it's great to see you working together, and even stronger, as you said, stronger together. This is terrific work. You know, I was thinking about the communication aspect, and maybe that is something that our board can help. We have the public information officer now, newer position, and maybe that's something that we can work on to get that information out any way we can. And I also wanted, the METCO plan with Park and Rec, I think is terrific. I'm thinking even as we move forward into other DPW positions, Parks and Forestry. I remember that was a big summer job to get, working for the DPW.
Yeah.
And also, I think working with youth services. I know that jobs are posted with them, private jobs, and maybe getting that information out for METCO students or some type of partnership there to open up, private jobs as well as public jobs. But from what I'm hearing tonight, I just really appreciate your work and thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Matt.
Jay.
Hi, Rachel and Alex. Thanks for joining us.
Jay.
I have a question in regard to active recruitment. How far, meaning outside of Massachusetts, do you reach in order to create a diverse slate for the positions that you're looking in? What comes to mind specifically for me are historically Black colleges and universities and those other resources that you can tap into that may not be in Massachusetts, because a lot of the active recruitment or passive recruitment that I've heard here is really focused in Massachusetts and trying to find people that are locally or having those people come to you rather than you actively going out to them. So can you talk a little bit about that type of outreach and if you're successful in doing that and if we've been able to fill any roles in that way?
Great question, Jay. We have not actively posted at any historically Black college. Excellent idea, though. But we have no barrier as it relates to out of state candidacy. If there's a position available, we post our vacancies on Indeed. Any exposure that we get there, we have a number of out of state candidates for various positions that we've had available. And now that we're all online, it's made interviewing for those positions fantastic and easy. And so we don't have any restriction there. So it's a great opportunity to do more active recruiting and targeting colleges and universities with people of color.
We have had candidates from across the United States, and we've actually even hired one person out of state for a remote teaching position. So we don't have a limitation as to the state. We had considered actually going to the universities that are more local, and COVID came local as in New York, starting to work our way south. So we wanted to see if we would have success in some more leaving the state and moving to some of those other universities that had higher rates of students who are going into education who were students of color. So we were beginning to do that work, and then we got shut down. We do reach out to all of the universities that have high enrollments of students of color through a new program called Handshake. So like there are systems developing all the time now for recruitment since it's gone all virtual. We are still in the learning curve for how to make those more effective. So we've had some experiences that haven't kind of worked out, but we're trying different tools and different ways of reaching out to more diverse universities with more diverse populations in the education field so that we can figure out how to do that more actively. I hope that helps to answer the question, but it's sort of like the landscape is changing and we're all trying to make sure that we're keeping up with it in order to really reach out to the most diverse staff that we can.
Thank you.
I am thrilled to hear that you're using Handshake. That is really the tool to be on these days, and certainly all of our students are there. And actually, one of the VPs at Handshake was the head of career education at Wellesley, and Christine Cruz-Vergara left to go work for Handshake because she thought it was so pivotal for the industry, in fact. So
it's very new, I think.
I think we started using it about 3 years ago. So
it's all relative.
All relative, right? Natasha.
Hi, I just had one other comment that just as a suggestion, there are opportunities for language teachers to be native speakers. So I think that's, that would be something to look for, I think, possibly. And we're talking about leadership, but there's also staff at all levels, right? So I mean, teachers at all level and all of that. So this is exciting. I guess the question that I have is there for communications, like Matt was saying, is there a location where there are goals and kind of accountability for this? With the hope that you can meet it. I know you're trying all different avenues. I'm just saying, but is there somewhere where it's visible so that we know kind of what the goal is and percentages and what the goal is in 5 years or something to that effect?
Yeah, I think we could do a better job of setting those goals, and that's actually the next iteration of the work that I hope to do, at least at the school side. As I mentioned before, I started to talk to the principals each about what are their staffing goals for this year, so that we can develop those as we go. COVID was a problem for our recruitment last year, a big problem, because there was a lot of fear and panic at the end of the year with respect to, so I had this plan. We had the hierarchy for equity training level, well, I don't even know it, first iteration, because I've changed it for this year. But the first iteration I started last year. And when COVID came along, there was a lot of fear that they weren't going to find staff, and moving everything to online. And there was like a hire who which was like, So now that we're kind of settled into what, the way things work now, we're trying to slow it down and so allow for more thoughtful conversations and not this fear. We also hired so much staff, and recently we hired quite a few teaching assistants. Thanks. I appreciate that the school committee let me put up my little code so people could scan it to the position. I will shamelessly try and figure out ways to recruit folks, but we hired quite a few staff that were diverse. So I'm hopeful that as we're coming to the end of this year and we're offboarding, onboarding, and turning over staff, that we'll be able to retain some of the staff that we hired temporarily in the following year, because there's usually a lot of turnover at least the teaching assistant level, so that we can then begin a pipeline system potentially for some of our teaching assistants into teaching positions. So there's quite a few things happening there as well.
And just my last comment, I agree with Jay that I think we need to be creative about where to find different candidates, because we want to have choices of candidates of all different races and ethnicities and everything. We don't want to discriminate against anyone, but we also want to get the right people for the right jobs. We don't want to put someone on a job that is not qualified and set them up for failure, because then the repercussions of that are not a good thing either. So I just think it takes effort for all of us to find, in this area where it's not as visible, to find people of color. It's going to take some effort, I guess, and to find the right candidates. So thank you.
Thank you.
They're out there though. And that's the good news, Natasha, is that the candidates are out there. And so often you hear, I can't find any candidates of color. Well, it's to your point, then we need to start looking better, because they're
that happens. I'm in a field where it's like very few women. And so when they're like, where are the women? We're all right here. It's just that we need to be able to network so people can see us. So anyway.
Can I ask a question of the two of you? One of the issues I think that we have is we have not done a good job of collecting data, just demographic data in general about our employees. Do you find any challenges in collecting that data or in going back and asking for it? Is that an issue or not an issue? I know that
So
I know that at the college, at least, we have a mixture of disclosure. And sometimes it's just, I think, benign neglect and somebody didn't actually ask. I don't know all the reasons, so curious.
Rachel, you can assist me with this, but we put it in our applications, but people don't have to answer the question regarding race. So, but then when they're onboarded, we do need to ask the question because the state expects us to report that information. Once it's recorded now, how well has it been recorded in the past? I think it's very mixed. I don't think that we have accurate information for our entire population as to who identifies as a person of color. So it's kind of tricky because I know in my first year when I was starting this group at the school level, I was trying to figure out how to get that information. And that's when I figured out this is very snarly. Why is this so challenging? So I just publicize it to all and have folks who wish to join the group self-identify and come and be part of the conversation. And I continue to do that now that Rachel and I are doing this together.
Yeah, yeah. It's so similar to what Alex said, Marianne. We could probably do better with collecting the data. You know, it's funny, I guess my own bias is slipping in. When I see those forms that ask me to self-identify, I never want to do it. I never want to do it. And so when I see it, I toss it. I don't want any other reason to be identified. So it's tough, but you know, for the reporting out that Alex spoke of, it's, you know, we are asked. And so, and then when we don't have the data, we're asked to guess it, which is no good. And so I think there's some area of improvement there. So
I just asked because I know this is kind of one of the challenges. If we're trying to set goals and figure out how to say that we're making progress or not progress, it actually requires that we have some data. And I do understand, I mean, I think most people avoid those sections, right? So it is a challenge. Jen, I'm just looking at the clock, everybody. It's 7 o'clock, so we're going to try to wrap this up. But Jen.
So quickly, I've been thinking, I'm wondering, in the schools arena, I know that they've done a lot of work on professional development around race equity, that there's been a lot of intentional things offered. And I'm wondering if there's something parallel for the town government structure. I know it's obviously a lot different, but I'm wondering if there's been some exploration as to kind of creating some, mandatory, I guess is the word that I'm thinking that I don't really want to use, but is there some kind of way to get everybody on board with some basic trainings and kind of getting back to that how to be a better coworker kind of theme, and understanding bias and microaggressions and things like that may be coming up in the workplace.
Alex, I'm thinking about that training that you were going to come do for us. I think you mentioned it. Did you mention it in your opening?
The hiring for equity?
Yeah, the hiring for equity. And so there's opportunities like that. But I think there are other ones, Jen, that we could probably introduce. It is hard because, you know, school and town, we're collaborating on this and this is fantastic, but it's not always, you know, it's not apples to apples, right? But I think that we can continue to explore that as we look for different speakers and presenters to come and to tell. Alex and I talk about different opportunities like that, who she has, who I may have or know. So we share those resources, and so maybe we could, you know, get something like that together.
I wonder if there's like any part of the evaluation of employees that kind of addresses cross-cultural competence or you know, like I'm thinking that the teachers must have some part of their evaluation process that speaks to kind of their level of comfort and knowledge about equity issues. And I wonder if there's, you know, if there's a way to bake that into kind of, it's everybody's job you know, so that it's something that's being discussed, you know, at your yearly evaluation kind of thing?
We are working on that. So the teacher's evaluation has many elements and indicators inside of it. And one of the things that is the next thing that that I really want to focus on, I've been talking about it for over a year, probably a year and a half, is how we can use the evaluation as a way to really hone in on our goals around DEI. The tool by the state is very easily aligned to this work. As a district, we have very high performing teachers, and it's not that it's a way to improve the practice and target these particular goals. That's really exciting to me. So I'm partnering with some other members of the district leadership team to really begin to have those conversations, because we also have to work with our association to make sure that, you know, everybody's in agreement in the direction that we're going in. But excited about doing that work, and I'd love to connect with, that'll be the next thing Rachel and I am sure, as we're building stronger together, that we can work together on how to look at the evaluation. We're working closely with Dr. Joanne Allen Willoughby as well, and she has great ideas in this area. I've worked with her on looking at some of our non-contracted employees and how we can improve the evaluation process there with a lens of equity. So as you said, and that's the work that REAL is really trying to do, is to look at this not just through an HR lens and a curriculum lens, also a policy lens and a culture lens, and all of these different pieces, which is why I really appreciate the fact that the schools, I've worked with districts that have, you know, the Office of Equity, and it's like one person who's charged with this work. But I really appreciate how Needham Public Schools is doing this as a collaborative effort across a bunch of different folks, kind of looking at those big rocks and how we embed diversity, equity, and inclusion in the work that everybody is doing.
Great. I was going to give Vivian the last question, but I do just want to check in and see if Toyin has anything that he wants to ask, since I think we've heard something from everybody else. You're good? Okay. Vivian, last question, and we'll wrap.
It's actually not a question. It's more of a comment in response to a couple of the last questions, which Rachel may not have had an immediate lens on, as it happened under Chris's leadership with Chuck. And that is that there was a very intentional effort in 2015 or 16, I think it may have been FY16, where the entire performance evaluation process was reviewed and updated with the committee of managers. Kate, I'm not sure exactly what departments those managers were in, but there's a pretty significant overhaul, and that included some training on how to assess performance of town employees across the board, and it included some sections. I actually delivered the training. It included some sections about sensitivity to diversity, thinking about issues related to inclusion, how to assess and judge performance without having you know, any sort of bias lens, and also to take into account some cross-cultural issues. So just in response to your question, there was a very intentioned effort a number of years ago to do that. And I believe that system still exists. Is that right, Rachel? Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to say thank you to both Rachel and Alex for coming and sharing their work this evening and some of their priorities for going forward. I was also, as I was listening, carrying in my head, wondering if the opportunity to build in, you know, sort of a basic DEI curriculum might be something that would be a grant opportunity for us, looking maybe with another town or partnering with another town. If we could build a core curriculum in that space that we could have access to for employees. I don't know, but you have lots of good work going on, and we certainly have a long way to go. So
We do. Thank you, Marianne. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
for having
everybody.
me. Thank you.
thank you.
Bye.
All right. So we are ready. Again, Lisa, I'm going to bring you
You
up.
sure you ready? Are you sure?
I'm ready. Are the rest of you ready? So let's go back to our guiding principles. And do you want to share your screen again with your documents so we continue to work all in the right place?
Absolutely. Do folks see that now? Okay, good. Oh, so we left off somewhere in this pink or red and blue collection of thoughts. And this was the result of the combining, or the potential combining of points 1 and 2. And I think while there were some parts of it that we were okay with, there were other parts that still required more discussion. So it might be helpful if folks have the original, or I can pull that up as well. But I think what probably is more important is, do we like this? What parts of this do we like? So just for warm up, right? So racial equity in Needham means that the experiences of people of color are the same as those of the white majority. From day-to-day interactions, housing opportunities, interactions with the police and other responders and other first responders, employment and educational opportunities, etc. On the path to racial equity, people of color will see others of color in leadership roles in government, business, and systems, in the school system, and civic groups. Our community will have opportunities to learn a more complete version of American history and its relevance to today's challenges. Students in schools will experience equity with regard to aspects of their education. And maybe it makes sense to say to all aspects of their education. For example, placement, acknowledgement, recognition, engagement, discipline, curriculum, and co-curricular involvement. So that's in blue because I think we were close to liking it. But how is that sitting with folks?
And I think one of our goals last time was really, we chose to be more explicit in these items that we laid out for each category. We'd done that in one category, and we sort of made the others more parallel to that, with being more explicit. Are people good with this one? Looking.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with where we are, yes.
Trying to see if I can see more of you here. Wiggle my screen. Okay. All right, so we're good with that one.
We're
Down to
good.
the next.
So when I fix that, the rest of it changed from red to blue, but we're good on A, B, and C. So anything that's either red or blue, we still need to discuss. So, okay, people of color will feel safe, validated, and treated equitably with respect to public safety. For example, arrests, use of force, motor vehicle stops, traffic infractions, handcuffing, and criminal applications.
Are we good with that? Jay,
I'm fine with that.
thumbs up?
Yep.
Okay, we're good with that one, Lisa.
Okay.
Wait, can I just ask a question? Sorry.
You may.
This is really something that I don't have knowledge of, so I'm really asking particularly our committee members of color. Is there an issue at all in terms of safety in town with responsiveness? Like these things I'll talk about if there was a perceived or, a infraction of some sort, that it would be treated equitably. But I'm also wondering if there's any issue about responsiveness. So if you are a person of color and you're seeking help from fire, police, any of our various entities, do you feel like you get the same responsiveness?
I think that's a difficult one to answer. I mean, from a business perspective, I feel supported, but I understand the point that you're trying to make. And I think to the extent that you want to add something, because we do, if we go back to the first leading point of saying police and first responders, I think responsiveness does come into play. And it is a very valid point.
I wonder if that almost comes maybe in the next one, all town related activities. Is that a category there somehow?
I'm open to it. It just struck me when I was rereading it that that wasn't included, and I just wanted to make sure that we thought about it.
Mary Ann, is it possible in E to follow up on your point, to perhaps include in the parenthetical, people of color will feel safe, validated, and included in all town-related activities, town meetings, and you could use utilization of and responsiveness from, or I mean, the idea being that it's not just utilizing town services, but that town services across the board, not just public safety, will be responsive to all members of the community.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Is that consistent with what you were thinking, Jay?
That's what I was thinking. So
Yeah.
I would like that one.
I think that goes really well.
And responsiveness from.
I don't know what's going on with the color, but trust me, I'll fix it.
We'll get it to black, yeah. Or to normal, yeah. Does that, so let me go back to D for a second. We're good with D, right? We were going to turn that color, so now we're looking at E. So does this create an E that we're good with?
People of color will feel safe, validated, and included in all town-related activities. For example, town meeting, government, utilization of and responsiveness from town services, participating in town events.
Maybe participation, or I'm just trying to get the context. So. I guess either one.
Yeah.
I just have another suggested edit there, or two actually. One is perhaps to change it to people of color will feel safe, validated, included, and treated fairly in all, or equitably in all town-related activities, such as town meeting, government, town service utilization and responsiveness, town event participation.
Treated equitably. Okay, so you said town government.
Town services utilization and responsiveness. And town event participation. I mean, you could also take out town. I mean, you could just simply say such as town meeting, government, services, utilization and responsiveness, and events.
This look good to folks? Imagine it in black. Okay, F, if the decision-making process, the voices and experiences of people of color will be honored and respected as valid. For example, equity in hiring, engagement and promotion, programs and events are inclusive and equity-minded. Intentional anti-bias efforts are employed in all considerations. Any feedback or any opposition?
Lisa, can I just say, I'm comfortable with what you have in F. E still just seems a little wordy to me, and I'm wondering if, as Vivian included, treated equitably, if that takes care of the issue of responsiveness, and if we can take out the parens there, just to make it, I think, a little bit easier to digest.
Any additional thoughts on that? Anyone feel like we need to spell it out?
I agree. I'd remove the utilization and responsiveness.
Okay, and then the last bullet there is all races will want to live here. Needham will be a desirable community for everyone.
Lisa, I think when we talk about housing, this one falls really short in terms of being very specific of what we want to talk about. There really needs to be some goals in regards to what we want to see. Perhaps mixed income housing. Zoning is always a difficult one, but you know, it just needs to be a little bit more specific, because it seems like we're just saying that everybody wants to be here, but not addressing any of the items that should make it equitable.
Okay, anybody want to take a stab at that language?
There was someone that submitted, I think Katie had sent this to us for a comment to the Nuari group. I'm looking for it on email. It was some great feedback that I saw a couple of weeks ago in regards to a few items. So if anybody has it before me, I think it would be great to include some of those items here.
I guess, Marianne?
Yep.
This is such a complicated web, as we talked about with housing. And I think I just want to be careful of conflating affordability and racial equity. I could think of communities that are extremely affordable and also extremely white, okay, in parts of Massachusetts. So there are affordability options outside of Needham that you can go through, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're more diverse, and in some cases less. So I just want to be really careful here. And this almost seems like a long conversation of how, maybe it's not, it could be shorter, but on how we tie in housing to this. And I think there are aspects you can say that people will not be discriminated in housing applications or when being shown a house, you know, those types of things that we can concretely say. But I just want to be careful about the affordability piece.
So Lisa, I specifically tried to stay away from using that affordability word, and I used mixed income, and only for that reason that Matt just mentioned.
Jay, I appreciate that. I think that we have to recognize that, you know, obviously we can't dictate who decides to move to Needham, and we wouldn't want to. But if it's not accessible, then we are creating a barrier. So I I think there has to be some sense of income accessibility. And Matt, I know where you're coming from. There's just, it's a very complicated problem. But I do think it's important to put it out there that we would like to see some work done in that arena.
But I think, Marianne,
Yeah,
just to that point, I know we talked about it last time or over several meetings, is the idea is that if we are a welcoming community and we have people who feel welcome and happy here, it's a magnet to our community. So I just want to focus on that aspect instead of, and maybe what do we say? Mixed income is probably maybe a better word, but again, I don't want to get bogged down in saying that income is always a factor, or I think then that can come across even worse. I want to be just very careful on that point.
Jay, maybe you elaborate on mixed income and maybe what you mean by it, because I think when you
Sure.
talk about it a little bit more in depth, it brings more clarity.
Right. So the reason why I tend to use mixed income is because for me, affordable is a very negative connotation where people typically want to build, housing projects or things of that nature. The way that I look at housing in terms of it being diverse and particularly racially diverse is that you can have affordable units within a rather rich complex. So, instead of it being specifically designated or segregated for all of those that are low income to be in one specific place, they're integrated into a larger housing opportunity. So if you're building, a 400 unit complex or whatever, there are a certain percentage of units where people have a lower or different income than the average income associated with those that are purchasing that unit. And that's why I typically use mixed income. It may mean different things to other people on the call, and I would love to hear that, but that's the way I typically look at it. Marcus, did you want to chime in on that one?
Yeah, so along with that, when I think about mixed income, I think about a growing population of so many people who have grown up in Needham, who have left Needham, and who are young adults trying to come back home or close to Boston to work and things of that nature, with wanting to possibly, come back home and commute, knowing it's not a bad commute, but with no real estate and places for them to live, or people that would maybe make a little bit more, but definitely not enough to purchase or to afford housing, permanently. But I think with mixed income, I think that allows for that younger population to maybe come back and help our communities, our businesses, and retail and everything kind of thrive, because they're going to be supporting our community as far as that aspect, and being able to live and be here and kind of be where they grew up, and kind of give back to the community in that way too. Because I think people would come back more, that younger demographic, if they could afford to be able to be here. And I think mixed income, that's another aspect, is what I see it as well.
Jay, I think I just
Oh.
found the comment that came to us.
is that the one from Jim Flanagan?
Yeah, it used the phrase racially and economic diverse and inclusive population. That the town will take proactive measures to rectify and support a more racially and economic diverse and inclusive population.
Do we like that? Instead of, in addition to?
I think we need to look at it.
Okay, so
Like
someone read
take
it again.
proactive measures.
I just emailed it to you.
Thank you.
I don't know if you can get to it if you're sharing your screen though.
And certainly, Jay, I think any housing that we have been developing lately has been developed under the principle, right, that you're talking about, with working to find, to mandate some level of mixed income for developers to cooperate with.
I would agree with that, but the one thing that I would kind of push on is that a lot of the income levels that were mentioned from the housing discussion were way too high, and that they weren't affordable. So it is something that needs to be looked at, but it is in the vein of what we're talking about.
So, and I think that's something that this group might want to think about, right? Because by making it even a more affordable number, then then a developer, under the way the principles work, can build even fewer of those units that are more affordable. So the question is it better to build fewer, more affordable, or is it better to build somewhat more, slightly less affordable, but still more affordable than the market-based units? I think that's a real trade-off that people have to grapple with.
I think you can do both. I think that you can build your units and everything doesn't have to be set at 80%. You can have a scale where, obviously there could be, if you're talking about 100 units that are in that affordable category, some of it could be 80%, some of it could be 60%, and then you have 1 or 2 units that may drop down to 50%. I don't think it has to just be that one single number. You can reach more people by having a sliding scale.
I feel like this one is this is a difficult nut to crack, this one. And I kind of feel like all we've been talking about before is a little less specific than this one. And I think the more we leave the details out of it, the better for this one. I think how we had it before we added that last sentence was it was good, but I just don't want to get into the weeds of that because I know nothing about zoning and housing and how you'd get to where you want to get to. So I think the less we put in this one, I actually agree with Matt. I think the less we put, the better it will be. Because I feel like all the other statements before are sort of the same way. We're letting these organizations dictate how they're going to get there to some extent, but the housing one, I feel like is a little more difficult.
So we do give pretty specific examples with regard to public safety. Less so with education.
Like but we don't say we want 40% this affordable, 20% low income. You know what I mean? We're not kind of going in the very specifics of we want. It might be nice if we did.
And we have, so this is the black ink is taken from the feedback. And then this first sentence was already there. And then this last one is sort of what we were working on until we came up with that. So what do folks think about either or both of these sentences?
Lisa, before we do that, I'm just thinking about what Tony just said, and I think the difference in terms of how the rest of them are framed is that we go in, for example, and here we're going into almost completely unique themes. If we go back to, for example, and kind of shorten or do a Clip Notes version of these into the actual items that the committee could address, it may be a little bit less specific and more focused at the same time.
I agree. I like us doing the EG and going through some kind of more specific, but also not getting into the weeds.
And are there other options? Like that sounds, what would be another option? So access, mixed income, and what?
I'm not sure what the right phrase is, but maybe it's like mixed use. I'm not sure if that's the right one, but so in other words, not having as much of an emphasis on only single family homes, but allowing more multi-unit houses or something, that so diversifying the housing stock. I don't know.
No, I know what you mean. I can't think of a.
I think multifamily is great, right? Multifamily options or housing. Something
Or you
that
could-
multifamily is what we've talked about before.
Or you could just say diversity of housing stock as one of these characteristics.
I agree, Marion. I think we have to be as general as we can because everything has another, unintended consequences. And there's so much to housing. And I will just say, I've dealt with affordable housing and it doesn't necessarily mean you get a diverse population in affordable housing. You get people who, teachers or nurses that don't necessarily are not of color. So again, I think mixed income might be way to, I hear what everyone's saying. And I think that's great to have people with mixed income. I know people who can't, white and of color who can't move back to Needham because it's expensive, but just mixing those issues and then saying we need more this type of housing, that type of housing. I think there's too much policy right now and we need to be more general.
Okay, all races will want to live here. Needham will be a desirable community for everyone. The town will take proactive measures to rectify and support a more racially and economically diverse and inclusive population. For example, housing access, mixed income, and diversity of housing stock.
I think that's improved that.
The town will take proactive measures to rectify and support a more racially and economically diverse and inclusive population. For example, housing access, mixed income, and diversity of housing stock. How is that sitting with folks?
I just think the word rectify is acting like we've done something recently in our zoning or, intentionally. I don't know.
So the commenter mentions historically, so I think that's why he used rectify.
I know, but I'm trying to live, I understand the historic aspect, but I think in the past 10 years.
I'm not, what would you offer in exchange?
Well,
I'm just telling you where it came from.
I think in the past 10 years, we've really tried to, well, since I've been on the board, that's what I can talk about, is increase our housing stock and try for some of these initiatives. So I think just support or
I
continue.
was going to say just to support. What if we said just to support a more racially and economically diverse?
Or continue to support, whatever. Yeah, I think.
What if it was a proactive, like an intentional, intentionally identifying barriers? I'm trying to think of what the word that I'm thinking of is. Like the town will intentionally seek to identify barriers to a more racially and economically diverse and inclusive population.
I think we could name a lot of barriers, but lack of affordability just because of the desirability of the community is a huge one. And lack of land is another barrier, but.
I think this is good. I think from my perspective, I think it's simple enough unless we want to add more EGs, but I'll leave that to the.
No, we don't.
I'll leave that to the.
We have a three EG cap, I think.
Well, yes, okay.
EG cap. It's kind of like how many whereases in a resolution. We have a
like
EG cap. Okay.
All right, we're good with G? Excellent. Okay.
I'm happy with it.
Jay, did you have a thought?
No, I was just saying I was happy with it. I'm sorry, I thought I was still on mute.
2, 3, and 4 were unchanged. And the 5th was added. All people commit to engaging with goodwill and respect in order to build and repair healthy relationships.
And I don't want to speak for Amin, but we had a conversation about, is there something that everybody could commit to in these guiding principles, that it's work that all of us have?
Thoughts on number 5?
I would just reverse repair and build.
Let me see what it was before. Any other thoughts?
I think the operative phrase here was all people, in a sense that in order to build and repair is going to involve engaging not just the sort of the historical majority white population, but also people of color, immigrants, and just the diversity of population, so that all people here is, I think, at least in my mind, was the operative word, because the rest of it is all putting focus on one group and what they have to do. But this is also committing for everyone we engage with it.
Thanks
I
for
think
that.
I would change it to something more descriptive then. Like people of all colors and something, something.
Yeah.
If that's really what you want to point out, you know.
Yes, that's
I
what
feel like
I mean, that was the point of this, was all people.
I didn't pick that up when I just read it, you know.
Right, yeah,
Do we like people of all races better?
all races, colors. Yeah, I guess all people, then we wouldn't have to start putting, for example.
Exactly. Wait, let's try.
I guess I was taking an engineering simplification here, but just saying all people.
All people, all humans.
What if you said all members of the community?
Yeah.
We're good with 5. All right, hearing
Any
no.
thumbs up? We're good? Yeah? Okay.
Excellent. Woo!
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Okay. So those are the 5 guiding principles. I will clean that up so it's uniform.
I'd like to go back to number 1, please.
Okay.
Just kidding.
I'll see you next Monday. So now what is left in this document are intentional practices. And there was an addition suggested. And we've gone through these before, but if they're interested in going through the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or shall we just have the conversation about the 8th intentional practice? Take a few minutes and read through them.
And then Ramin is ready to talk. Speak.
Give you a minute to read.
I think that we need to change the wording on some of them just so that it's the words themselves are parallel. Like we've got some that's starting with nouns and some that are starting with the verb. So like, for example, number 1, self-education. The next one is to foster safe environments, then engage in meaningful conversations. And then we're back to another noun, support services, just to make them consistent.
Okay. Ramin, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thanks. The reason why I added that was because at the end of the day, many of these other principles provide certain guardrails for how we're going to act and move forward. But at the end of the day, we want to, to eliminate the causes that have led to all these troubles that have, we are trying to solve now. And those problems of distrust, of prejudice, of ignorance. And really the way to do that is through that interaction and cultivation of friendships and getting to know, people from the different group. It's in line with the idea of, our race amity day, if you will. So I thought it's good to emphasize that as well here, and not sort of the principle of it.
All right, Marianne?
Yeah.
I agree with that. And this is a little off topic, but I had a friend who was Cape Verdean, and I guess they have a festival every year. I don't know where it is. I think it's on the Cape. And it was something where the community would all get together, the town would all get together. And when you talk about create or cultivate friendships or increase interactions or something that we could do, and I know we talked about something in Needham as well that would bring people together as an event. And I just think that kind of fits in there, as well as just bringing people together in general. So I support that.
Any other feedback on that?
Is this an item that people support?
I support it. It's the essence of community. And at the end of the day, this is respect and how we all get along. And I think it's an amazing ad.
Okay. Then I think we have two that need some rewording for parallel construction. And I was distracted for a moment trying to do some of that while people were talking too. I'm wondering if the first one might start with something like commit to self-education for a better understanding of. I got that far, and then I didn't get to reorganizing, more informed about.
Support is actually a verb.
It is.
So
Yeah, I was going to say it is a verb. Yeah.
Are we saying support services, or are we saying, I'm not sure what we're saying, I guess, with that.
So
Support services, support materials.
Okay, like use, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense now. Wouldn't it be like seek out support materials? Like, isn't the support materials not you're supporting the materials, but it's support materials?
I read it as support materials, support services, but it is unclear.
yeah,
Let's say two people, if we're arguing about it, it's unclear.
Is it for the town to provide them or for people to create them, I guess is.
so we support what other people are doing, but the other people are in the town. I shouldn't say other people. So it's town services, it's individual expertise, it's scholarships and organizations.
Okay.
With an understanding that support is a verb, I actually like that statement the way it was written. So.
Materials, etc. That way it doesn't look like an ad.
So you want me to switch back services and material?
Still the same problem.
I think it's fine. I'm sorry, I'm being picky. No, you're good.
You could put the word those before that, support those services, materials. Clarifies it.
Yep. Yep, there you go.
Good.
Ooh, it only takes 10 of us to write a sentence. We're good. One word made all the difference.
Thanks, Vivian.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any opposition, dissension, concern, questions with regard to the 8 intentional practices?
The only thing I would say, if I could, and I'm not suggesting we change it because I don't know how you get around it, but when you're blanketly saying that you're going to support or an organization that advocates for racial equity, there are hundreds or a lot of them. And I think in concept, the idea sounds great, but I also think that there's so many facets to these organizations that kind of the blanket saying that, okay, just because they advocate for racial equity, I support them. And that might not be necessarily true among all organizations. It's such a broad umbrella. So I'm not saying that we pick and choose and take it out. I think the idea is good. I think you want to support organizations that advance these things, but just a caveat saying that there might be groups that people decide not to support because they might have other intentions or whatever, or just don't align with everything that people align with. So I just want to put it out there as something that when I'm told to support an organization just because they believe in X, there's a lot of times a lot of other stuff that goes on that you might not agree with. So
Yeah, but
Would you, what
that's
if
proven.
we added to the end there, that advocate for racial equity consistent with the vision statement? Or aligned with the vision statement?
I mean, I don't even know if we have to go that specific, though. I just feel like you're not going to support all these materials expert,
It doesn't say support all those.
You're going to pick and choose what you want to support, as in anything in life. I mean, you could put research and support those services, materials, experts, and scholars. I mean, but I think it's understood. You're not going to just support anything just because it's showing racial equity. You're going to look into it and decide what you want to do. So I don't feel like we need to make it more verbose. I just feel like
it doesn't say support all those services.
Exactly. It says just think about supporting these the services that do this.
Fine. Just wanted to put it out. Yep.
So I feel like it was fine the way it was. But if you really want to be specific, I would say research and support, or look to support services, materials, expertise. But I think it's fine the way it is.
I'm fine then.
I wonder if we want to move 8 up to be the 4th. It's a little more consistent with the first 3, and it seems to flow a little bit better to me.
Mm-hmm.
No, I actually wouldn't mind if that was the first one. Just because it's the least, it's sort of the, it'd be nice if it was ordered in a way as to how involved you want to get. Sort of the first one is the easiest, and then it kind of a little bit more and more. So I kind of like it as the first one because if someone can't support that statement, they're not a good person. There's no other way. Like, if you don't want to support like the 3rd one or 4th one, you might feel uncomfortable and so on. But the first statement is just a no-brainer. Yeah, that's good. I like that.
We like the rest of the order?
Looks good to me.
Right.
Lisa, I know you're going to clean it up, but the spacing got changed when you shifted it.
Yes, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I am really excited about where we've kind of landed tonight. This is good. I am not going to ask for a vote tonight. I'm going to let everybody kind of sit with it. We'll read a clean copy and then hopefully we can vote it at our next meeting, would be my intent. Does that make sense to people? Gives everybody a chance to take a breath and look at it one more time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Marianne, could I just jump in?
Yes.
You did want to create a resolution for town meeting. So we're running pretty much up against it for the 22nd, but
Okay. When does that go
we
to
can,
print?
as long as it's voted that night, but we'd have to craft it based on this.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Everybody good with that? So we'll come back to this and we'll vote at our next meeting. Okay. And we will have a resolution for town meeting. It is at 5 of 8. And actually, I want to pause for a moment and say thank you, Lisa, for getting us through this.
Yeah.
My
Yeah, you
pleasure.
too.
Hooray.
You guys are great.
We have all worked hard to find the right words, and you have helped us to get them in the right place, in the right order, to give the message that we want and share that with the community. And I really appreciate that.
You're quite welcome.
So I just want to pause for a second. We did send out the boards and committees that the select board appoints people to. And I would make, I at least took a look through the whole document. I haven't looked at it. I'm not sure how many years it's been. I guess it's been 3 or 4 since I was doing these appointments, and I'm at, well, it must be at least 4 because next year will be mine again. So that will be year 5.
Right.
There are a few observations that I make. I don't know, and I didn't go back and guess because I don't believe guessing is a good practice, but I think there are relatively few people of color on this list. There are some that I know and some that I wouldn't be sure of. There's definitely a mixture of men and women. We do have one committee that appears to be all women. I counted 3 committees that appear to be all white men. You know, there's a mixture. Some people who have been serving on these committees for years. That's both a tremendous depth of experience, and it could be viewed as a way in which new people don't have an opportunity to come serve. So there's a balance in all of that. And I think that I would hope that for this group that we could have actually a longer conversation thinking as we look out into our second year, that we would come back to this and think about what might be our goals for boards and committees. How do we think about service on these committees? How do we think about them as an entryway to town government and to people building up areas of expertise in certain areas? So those are some of my thoughts. I don't know what other initial thoughts other people might have had taking a look through this.
I think the biggest initial thought is that we know we have some work to do. We have some work to do, and when we can get it into words, and I think, like you said, we have a more in-depth discussion, Marianne, I think we'll hopefully be able to help come up with some strategies and a vision on how we can help diversify things a little bit better going forward.
Marianne?
Yes, Matt?
As the vice chair who appointed this year, I will say, I think, our goal to increase the applicant pool is huge. That's really what we have to focus on. I think of the applicants that went before me for appointment, I think 2 were of color who got appointed, and the others were just, it was not a diverse, and it could have been because of COVID as well, but whatever we can do to try to increase that applicant pool, we put our heads together and figure that out, and also with town meeting as well, and show really what's involved, and it's not as scary as you think, and that these, here's a time commitment. It can be as much or as little as you want it to be on some of these committees. So just getting that education out to broaden our applicant pool, I think is step number 1.
And as I said, I had hoped to bring you also the list from the moderator, because the moderator appoints a number of committees and particular roles as well. So there's a couple of appointing groups, some key committees. Okay. All right, then we will save this, and it will be something that we'll come back to because I know that it's an area that we are interested in.
Great.
Jen,
And I'm not sure, and I know it's late and we all want to go for the night, but I know we've gotten a couple of different emails or contributions from the community, people who have either been following what we're doing or have been doing their own kind of work on it. And I know we're not supposed to be talking about it within the emails, and I'm wondering, like, if there is an opportunity for us to talk about some of the things that have come to the Newari in a future meeting, at least.
certainly, I think we can do that. I'm hoping that that meeting on that was March 22nd, that will move to March 29th. That we had previously called community interactions and looking at some things. We will also be spending some time thinking about a report to town meeting at that meeting, but I'm hoping we can do it there. Does that make sense, or is there one that you would love to discuss right now?
I don't want to discuss anything right now, but I do think that you know, we've been asking the community to be engaged, and so that the fact that they have taken us up on that I want to be careful to hear what they've had to say about it and talk about it.
I do think, as you know, as we did tonight with pulling up that one comment, that I appreciate people bringing those in, and we've had a couple of times where we've brought in feedback definitely that has come to the community from the public.
I think when we talk about the Tidwell report, when that's available, the report that Equal Justice Needham did, maybe that should be included, whether to see if the chief is going to look at that as well and see where we are and where we stand with some of those things and how we're going to move forward with that and how we're going to be better in those aspects. Maybe include that with the Tidwell report, or that session with the chief or something, because I know we got sent that. I know it's in depth, and I know a lot of time was taken to do that. So I feel like those are along the same lines.
Yeah, I had hoped that we would come back to that report after we'd had a chance to talk about the Tidwell report, just because I think that's going to consume a lot of time, and I don't want to give it short shrift. So I think we might be better to focus. That would have been my guess, but you're right. We do have that, and I'm fully expecting that we'll come back to it. Matt?
I was just going to move to adjourn.
Oh,
Chair.
I would actually welcome a motion to adjourn. And anybody want to stay here all night? Or is there a second?
Move to adjourn.
Second that motion. Okay. Let me find my list. Any discussion about our motion to adjourn? All right, then I'm looking for motions hopefully in favor. Matt?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Marcus?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Ramin?
Yes.
Vivian?
Yes.
We lost Natasha. Toyin?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. We are adjourned. Thank you. I am delighted that we have guiding principles and intentional practices, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Yes.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mary Ann.